Catharine Saxberg. I'm the Vice President of International Relations for Socan. I've been in this role for about 8 years. Previous to that, I ran the Canadian Music Publishers Association, now Music Publisher Canada, and I see Margaret McGuffin is with us today. And over the 10 years that I did that, I worked quite closely with the MMF, so it's really nice to be connecting with you and your members again today. I am also the co-founder of the Unison Fund.
Amazing, thank you. Chaye, would you like to tell us?
Yeah, hi, Andrea. Hi, thank you for having me. I'm Akotchayé, Okio. I'm in charge of international development for Africa, sub-Saharan Africa precisely. SACEM is a collective management organization, a music collective management organization based in France with an international footprint. Regarding Africa, we aim to defend and promote African creators and publishers. We provide support through cultural initiatives, partnerships with festivals, music markets, for instance, and capacity building sessions. And alongside African and international actors who intervene on the continent, we strive to improve royalties collection and distribution, and of course, advocate copyright enforcement. Thank you.
Thank you. Habib, let's hear from you.
Sorry, hi everybody. I'm Habib Achour. I'm head of Africa and the Middle East at SACEM. I work in the International Development Department. Chaye said it in a few words, so I won't repeat. I'm so happy to be here because I used to be a manager before being at SACEM, before arriving at SACEM, so I know what it takes to be a good manager and how many information you need to know and how much knowledge you must have to be a good one, especially internationally. And maybe we'll talk about it a bit later.
Definitely. That would be wonderful. Okay, well, just to start to sort of put the pieces of all this together, let's start with a little presentation chat from Catharine at Socan about Socan's international strategy and development.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen. There we are. So again, it's very nice to be here. I thought it would make some sense, first of all, to do a bit of a reminder about what Socan does in the music industry ecosystem. And it's comparable to what most collective management organizations do, but it gives us a chance to be able, a bit of a refresher. So a collective management organization like Socan really has 4 main roles. Job 1 is collecting money on behalf of our members and then distributing it out to those members. That is the most important thing that we do. Close to the most important thing we do is the member support, and that can be everything from helping a member decipher a royalty statement to helping them develop in their career. And we're going to talk about how we do that internationally a little bit later in these slides. Third is global governance. So we are only Socan is only as strong as the weakest link in the system globally. So we are all interconnected. Socan and all of the organizations that do what Socan does all partner with each other. And so we have a strong interest in making sure that all of our partners around the world are as strong as they possibly can be. And fourth would be advocacy. So that's making sure that governments at all levels don't forget the value of creators and their efforts. So Socan has 165,000 Canadian members. It's those 165,000 Canadian members that own Socan. We are a not-for-profit organization. And through our agreements with organizations around the world, we represent creators from around the world. So today's presentation really isn't focusing on how we collect the money when your music is being played around the world. And in order to do that well, there's really 4 things that have to be in place. So first and foremost, a foreign territory has to have a copyright law. And that may sound fairly basic, but you may be surprised at how many countries are still struggling with the basic concept of copyright. It's also important to remember that the copyright law in Canada, although some of the principles may be the same, will differ from Canada to France to Korea to every other country. So copyright isn't necessarily the same everywhere you go. But first and foremost, you can't you can't monetize your music rights unless there is a law that says that you can, right? So first and foremost, you need legislation. Second of all, you need to get users of music on board with the idea of paying for music. So you need to develop a licensing framework, and you need to work with users of music to get them to enter into licenses that will obligate them to pay for the use of music. Once you've done that, then you have to get them to actually pay. And those, I've broken those out as just two separate things because they are in fact two separate functions. Getting the license is one thing, getting them to actually pay on a license can be something else entirely. And then the fourth thing is that you need an organization like a Socan or a SACEM within that territory to actually do those collections and then distribute the money out. And distributing the money out is a very complicated process. So it's identifying and paying the correct rights holders. So countries around the world, to me, really fall into three categories. There's territories like France, the UK, the US, Germany, Australia, Japan, who are very well established at all four of these things and do them well. There are other countries that are emerging that might still only be at step one in terms of developing legislation, or territories like the Caribbean, where the challenge to get music users on board for licensing, you know, like the big resorts, shopping malls, is still very much a challenge. And then there's another group of societies, sadly, that are problematic, where there are struggles with the legislation framework, where there are struggles around legality. And those are, you know, countries like Russia, China, Greece. So these four pillars of collecting rights around the world all have to work properly. And that's not always the case. But that's at least to give you sort of a sense of what some of the issues are. Now, my next two slides are really focusing on I was going to say SACEM, on Socam's international development efforts. So the first one is about our international development around markets. First and foremost, we have agreements and relationships with collective management organizations that cover the globe. So we work with this web of agreements. They're called reciprocal agreements, wherein we collect on behalf of SACEM's members, for example, and then we pay SACEM. And SACEM likewise collects on behalf of our members when Canadian music is played in France, and they in turn pay us. So that web of agreements is the framework of how international development is actually done, and on which everything rests. Socan is also an active participant in global and regional fora. Now, I made a reference here to SACEM. So SACEM is the Society of Societies. So based in Paris, it's an organization to which most of the organizations that do what Socan does belong. And SACEM sets standards in terms of governance, in terms of rules for distribution, in terms of rules for data. And Socan is a very active participant in that, much like SACEM, where both organizations are on the board of directors and participate in a number of specialized committees. We also Socan also enters into a number of what are called multi-territory licensing agreements for online uses. So what that means is when a digital service provider doesn't want to necessarily have to set up a license with every single collective management organization in every single territory. So there's an opportunity for them to work with one who will license a bunch of territories on their behalf. So this happens a lot in Europe. Societies in the UK and Germany and Switzerland all license a whole bunch of regions on behalf of license on behalf of a whole bunch of regions. We have relationships with all of those, but in particular, our main partner in this activity is SACEM, and they do a very good job for us. So a lot of our digital licensing for Europe is handled through SACEM. And finally, as I mentioned before, when I explained the wide variety in terms of development for societies around the world, Socan takes its responsibility to help develop the capacity of societies and copyright frameworks within growing regions. Now, when it comes to international development for our members, this is an area where societies can differentiate themselves. When it comes to licensing and distribution, Socan has to treat SACEM's members exactly the way we treat Socan's members, and vice versa. SACEM has to treat SACEM's members the way they treat Socan's members when it comes to licensing and distribution. When it comes to services that we provide specifically, that's an area where organizations can distinguish themselves. So in the case of Socan, we have a number of things that we can do for our members. So starting with our Socan houses in Los Angeles, Nashville, and Paris, we have very nice, comfortable homes that our members can book in advance at basically no charge, where they can go and spend some time in those key music markets, develop contacts. Our Socan office in Culver City can help in terms of establishing co-writes and helping meet publishers. And we have additional sorts of development opportunities also in Nashville and in Paris. We run international song camps where we bring our writers over to foreign markets. We've done a number of these in conjunction with MPC in order to, allow our writers to develop their skills and to build up their copyright base. We've switched in the pandemic to something called Virtual Song Camp Mondays, which allows us to break down the borders and allow co-writes between Socan's writers and writers around the world. We believe very much in maximizing our relationships with our US affiliates. So that's ASCAP, BMI, to a lesser amount, CSAC, and CSAC with an S, just so that you're not confused. There's CSAC with an S, CSAC with a C, with CSAC with an S, and GMR. And this is for managers in particular, I want to flag this because this is a really important point. ASCAP and BMI too often are treated as sort of Tweedledum and Tweedledee, and they are very, very different organizations. They pay very differently. Their bonus, particularly around their bonus structures. So Socan can be a real resource to you in helping to determine which of the US affiliates you should be assigning your US collection rights to, because they're very, very different, and we're developing some expertise around that. We are also expanding our genre expertise amongst our A&R team. We have just recently hired a member of our A&R team specializing in hip hop and R&B. We have strong relationships within the music industry, which we very much enjoy, including our friends here at MMF. And then, of course, it's the Socam Foundation, and they provide support for foreign tours, for international career development and creation opportunities. When it comes, however, to specifically for collecting your international royalties, we in the International Relations Department take a very member-centric approach. First and foremost, if Caroline was here, I think she would definitely validate the point when I say that one of our first strategic approaches is to be the squeaky wheel and to ensure that Socam members are getting paid when their works are used around the world. Caroline teases me quite frequently about the squeaky wheel nature of Socan when it comes to this issue. We work very closely with our membership department to make sure that we are serving our members and solving their issues and chasing down their royalties, and helping them also, again, understand the issues around copyright law. As I said, I use the example of Korea, and the rights for which you get paid in Korea are actually quite different than in Canada. So you might say as a writer, hey, I've got this big hit in Korea, I haven't seen it come through on my royalty statement, and it may be simply because that's not a right that's recognized in Korea. So these are the sorts of things that we work really hard to help you with when you have questions. We also work quite proactively looking at a lot of, it's very much a data-driven business to make sure that we're catching all of the royalty gaps and all of the anomalies, all of the aspects where you might not have gotten paid. So if you're a film and TV, if you represent film and TV composers, the best example here is, cue sheets that get filed properly for the opening credits of a theme, but not the closing credits, for example. And so we'll help catch those things and make sure that they get paid. But most importantly, I think one of the things that's important to managers is that Socan is, if not the only, but one of the very few societies in the world that does not charge a commission on foreign royalties for performing rights. That is of critical importance. As managers, you understand sort of more than most about the importance of relationships when it comes to driving your business. So relationships are also very much a key part of our international development. Prior to being locked in this room for a year. I spent a lot of time on airplanes, visiting societies around the world, again, part of the squeaky wheel strategy. And I would say, you know, I've got people saying, well, but you can do your job just fine from this little room. And I said, well, part of the reason I can do my job is because I have traveled. It's because I built the relationships around the world. And it's on the basis of getting to know people face to face that we can then transition into this new world in which we find ourselves in. And again, we've got particularly close relationships with the American PROs. That's our largest foreign market. From the Socan's perspective, the money earned via the US territories represents about 45% of all of our foreign income. So the US is definitely the most important market for Socan members. As a whole. Obviously, individual members will have other territories that are of particular importance to them, but as a whole, for the 165,000, the US is the key market. And again, we serve on the CSAC committees to lead in the development of business rules. And when I make mention here of attending these CSAC meetings, it's not just about the agenda of the meetings. Those are great opportunities for us to, I don't think they'd be insulted if I characterize them this way, but to shoot a lot of fish in one barrel. So if I'm going to a CSAC meeting within the Asia Pacific region, rather than me spending member money to make half a dozen trips towards the Asia Pacific territory, I can make one trip and I can meet with 20 or 30 societies over that period of time. Now, SACEM is going to talk to you about their efforts in the Middle East, and I'm looking forward to hearing that. But before they do that, I wanted to touch on the fact that Socan has just recently signed a new agreement with ESMA, which is a new music organization covering key Middle Eastern territories. We're very excited about this partnership because there's a very strong Canadian connection here. ESMA is being led as the brainchild of respected Canadian artist, publisher, executive Spec. Those of you who are my age might remember the Dream Warriors, and Spec was a Dream Warrior. So he's had over 10 years of high-level music rights experience within the Middle East, one of Billboard's 100 international power players, and still, despite living in Dubai and New York and London over the past number of years, is still very much a proud Canadian. And Socan was very pleased to work with Spec to assist with the first experimental license for the major radio network in that region. Now, before I pass on to Habib, I just want to make a couple of comments about Socan's relationship with SACEM. So we have had a long-standing, very effective reciprocal agreement between Socan and SACEM. Obviously, SACEM, particularly as far as Socan's French repertoire is concerned, is a critical market for our French repertoire, but it's also a critical market for our English language repertoire. And in fact, if you look at the top 10 songs in most years, top 10 Socan songs for most years in France, generally the majority of them are English language songs. So just people might think that because it's France that it's really of critical importance for French Canada, and it is, certainly no doubt about that, but it's also a key territory for English Canada. And as I mentioned earlier, for the past 4 years, Socan and SACEM have had a very successful partnership for these multi-territory online licenses. They've done a great job for us in terms of licensing digital services throughout Europe and on our behalf. And again, Socan and SACEM have worked together along with other societies when it comes to addressing problem markets. When the global system has run into problems in territories like Spain and Italy, Socan and SACEM have been leaders in terms of trying to determine solutions for those situations. So I'd like to then, I think Andrea's plan is to entertain some questions on this before we turn it over to Habib, and I think I have a slide that then asks the question. Questions?
Perfect. Thank you. I mean, that was wonderful. That to be honest, that covered a lot of information, a lot of really useful information for everybody, I think. I'm just scrolling through. Amy, did you see anything that we should address at this point?
We just had a couple of requests. So one was wondering if we could get the contact information for the new A&R rep that's focused on hip hop and R&B.
Yes.
So perhaps we can just include that in our post-event email, or if you've got it, Catherine, and are able to put it in the chat, that would be amazing as well.
Okay.
And then there was another question about the differences between BMI and ASCAP. I don't know if there's time to get into that on this webinar, or if you've got some insights you can share, and maybe a direction on how we could access that information through Socan after.
Yeah, so there's a whole seminar on that alone, so I won't take up too much time answering that question. But again, I do want to stress that they're very different. The other thing to keep in mind, and typically when these questions come forward, the best way to handle it is to contact your Socan rep about your specific situation. The other thing that I would add is that we can't future cast in terms of the differences. We rely on history. So you know, like the class action lawsuit TV commercials say, past performance isn't necessarily a guarantee of future results. But what we can say is from looking at past trending data, there's some very key patterns between the kinds of formats that are better compensated with one society versus the other. The thing to remember also is that BMI is an unusual organization in that they are run by broadcasters rather than publishers and songwriters. So they can change their bonus structure much more easily without necessarily communicating it in the same way that ASCAP is bound to communicate it to their members. But for whoever asked that question, I would suggest reach out to your Socan representative and ask them. And if they say, that sounds complicated, say, Catherine told me I should call and ask you.
That's great. And so just in case people are unaware, how do you, oh, someone is asking this question. I was just going to ask, how do you know who your Socan rep is?
Okay. So if you have clients that are not assigned members of Socan, just call into the information line, and there's operators standing by ready to take your call, and they will be able to direct you to the appropriate person.
Great, thank you. So there's a bunch of questions here, and I know, Andrea, we've got more stuff to cover, so I'm going to just ask one or two more that deal with international, and then maybe with some of them we can find the answers and share them with folks after the fact. So thanks for all of your questions, and we will try to get to as many as we can live and the rest after. So there was a question about, Catherine, if there are key international conferences or meetings that you'd recommend for our members to build international alliances.
Oh, what a great question. Let me think about that, and I can add something. You know, the ones that come to mind obviously are things like MEDEM and WOMEX, but the problem is that the landscape is changing so dramatically with the pandemic that it's sort of hard to know what is going to be on where. I would definitely, you know, though one of the things that I can say when I travel, all the interesting places I get to travel, is that there is a great deal of respect and interest in Canadian Music Week. And Canadian Music Week really does work hard to have an international focus. They always have certain territories every year that are of particular interest to them. And so the great thing about it is that you don't have to go very far in order to start expanding your international horizons. You can go as far as well, online this year, or Toronto in other years, to be able to participate in Canadian Music Week.
That's great. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to just take one more question. Wondering if it's up to the artist to notify Socan about international radio play received. No, it's not. The radio logs certainly for major markets, those are, we got a pretty good handle on what's being played around the world on radio stations, that information, and as do our partners around the world. So in Canada, we work from a census basis. So radio stations submit logs, as you know, and most of the other territories from where the bulk of our money comes from use a similar system. So radio is one of those uses of your music that is generally relatively straightforward in terms of being able to collect and distribute. That's great. Thanks so much. And Andrea, I guess I'll pass it off to you. And folks, sorry if we didn't get to your question, but we'll try to find you answers.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for helping with that, Amy. That was great. Thank you, Catherine. That was a really helpful presentation. You definitely addressed all of my my questions that I had. So that was really comprehensive and wonderful. So now we'll pass it over to Akotchayé and Habib from SACEM to explain that side of things.
Okay, I'll share my screen.
Yes.
So I also have a short presentation. Okay. So thank you very much, Catherine, because I mean, I can really say that how we call our relationship is sister societies. So we define ourselves as sister societies, and this is so true between SACEM and Socan. We've been such partners since many years now. So SACEM is very close to Socan in its structure. It's a not-for-profit organization. We are a cooperative. We are run by our members. The model of the cooperative is an independent association of persons. And why this cooperative? First, for economic bargaining power. We are stronger together. We also need today very expensive technological tools. We share these resources, and these are economies of scale that are really important. And this is also to create a national and global network. This is, our societies are very transparent. There is a General Assembly elected by our 170,000 members. They elect our board of directors, who appoints our CEO. And all this is very transparent in our annual report. SACEM is the oldest, or one of the two oldest societies in the world. It was founded in 1851. That's a very, very long time ago, by creators, composers in Paris, who were shocked because their music was used in cafes and in ballrooms without their permission, without their authorization. And they made a scandal. They went to court, and that wasn't expected, but they won. And after this victory, they decided to create this first association and then cooperative called SACEM. The essential, the three jobs are the same as of course, what Catherine described. We collect the rights, we collect and distribute the rights, and there's a huge job in between the collection and the distribution. We protect and defend our members, we protect their rights, their interest, and they represent our repertoire. We also offer a wide range of services. We offer social protection to our members. We also offer professional training, and we are really committed to promote creation. We have the biggest fund in France to promote new projects. We invest in festivals. We invest everywhere in the world. Wherever the members come from, we protect and encourage them to develop their career abroad. So this is very important for managers who work with our members to know that we can be here to help and to guide them to a strategy of international development. Just a few figures. We have 176,000 members. Most of them are songwriters and composers, and 6,500 are publishers. Among these members, 15% are international members, meaning not French, and dispatched all around the world. This figure is very important for those who know about data management today, how important it is, and why we say that we really need huge budgets to treat, to collect, and to analyze this data. This is 77% increase year after year. We distributed rights in 2019 to 360,000 songwriters and composers and music publishers in the world. We have representation agreements. I'll say a bit more about it, but Catherine said a lot about these reciprocal agreements. and we have 500,000 licenses among the around the world, mostly for users of music, who can be just clubs or supermarkets or whatever, wherever music is played and broadcast. We have always had an international footprint. Our members are all around the world. And as you can see, a lot of them internationally are based in Africa or in the Middle East. And this is why our strategy has been for a long time to have a very special relationship with our members from Africa and from the Middle East. And recently, when Akotchayé and I arrived at SACEM, that was 4 years ago, there's been a decision to create this International Development Department in order to address the situations of these members, and also because Middle East and Africa are one of the most creative places in the world in terms of music, to have special opportunities there to develop our presence, to showcase their talent. We were speaking about events, what events, where should you go? This is also what we advise to our members or their managers. We advise them to go, for instance, to Visa for Music in Morocco, where there's a kind of link between Europe and South Africa and Sub-Saharan Africa. We recommend them to go to Beirut and beyond. It is a fantastic market to discover the Middle East artists and to meet the professionals. We organize SACEM stages in those areas, and Akotchayé will tell more about what we do in Sub-Saharan Africa in countries like Ivory Coast or Nigeria or South Africa. We have representations and offices, as I said, of course, with Akotchayé and myself in Africa and the Middle East, but also we have Stéphane, who's based in LA and who works for our members, international members, specialized in film music. We have one of our members is Alexandre Desplat, who you might know as one of the most famous international film music composer. We have an office in Lebanon, and this is thanks to this office in Lebanon that we have this experience and knowledge regarding Arabic music. In Paris, in our headquarters, we have a special section called the Oriental section, where we are able to analyze all the data coming from the Arab countries and to translate and to transliterate all works that have been played in these markets or abroad, but in Arabic. And as you might know, the Arabic language is really difficult to transliterate into our alphabet, and then to find the right works and identify these works is a huge challenge that we are able, one of the only societies in the world with this knowledge about this Arabic market. So we represent 100% of the world repertoire in France. This means for physical, for physical rights. And we are represented by these reciprocal agreements all around the world, more than 160. And as Catherine said, there are actually effectively 3 tiers of countries in the world, at least. Some of them, like the ones you quoted, like France or Canada or Germany, it's no problem for us to deal with. We have a very comprehensive agreement, and we perfectly know how other works. Our job is more regarding the 3rd tier of countries where there is no legislation. Maybe that's a slight difference between Socan and SACEM. We have a very political engagement in these countries where there is no respect of the author's rights and the copyrights. There might be a copyright law somewhere, but that is not implemented, that is not respected. So we have multiple examples in North Africa, in Sub-Saharan Africa, and in the Middle East, of countries where the law, if was respected, if it was implemented, would be the same as the Canadian or French law, but it is not. So we're doing a huge work of lobbying, first at the European level, and that is also how we got such important copyright laws since 2 years. In Europe, we have a new copyright law that's very important. We can put more pressure on the DSPs to increase our rate. We also try to convince authorities with the studies. We ask consultancy agencies to create studies, and these studies may show to the authorities in Africa and the Middle East, in emerging countries globally, how important creative and cultural industries are. They have a huge impact on the image of the countries, but also on jobs, on growth, and they can create a societal change. We talk a lot to the ministers of culture where we go. We are backed by the French diplomacy when necessary, when they have people who have the skills to talk about the cultural and creative industries. We have our office in Lebanon where we meet the people from the Middle East, and we work a lot in the UAE also with another strategy to create more implication of the government, of the authorities, to implement their copyright law and to use the huge events that are happening there. And this is why the artists that are members of Socan or SACEM should be very aware and interested in what's happening there. There's the next global exhibition will happen in Dubai, the next World Cup, the FIFA World Cup in Qatar. These events are very important for all our artists. So, as I say, we work, our members develop their career, and also we fight globally, internationally through CISAC. As Catherine says, CISAC, we gather during CISAC conventions, and this is where we can develop an international action to be strong together to fight against buyouts, for instance, that are a huge danger for creators today. I'll go very quick with this, but this is just to show that since 1999, we had the first contract with download platforms that became DSPs and streaming platforms, that we have agreements with all of them and licenses. And this is a very important part of SACEM's success today, is to have agreements and licenses with all major, like Facebook or Spotify, of course, but we also receive mandates from the publishers like Warner Chappell or Universal Music Publishing to represent them right online, as we do with Socan for Europe. So yes, this is just to illustrate what I just said. And we license worldwide for our members on all major platforms. And excuse me, I'm just discovering I wasn't supposed to do that presentation. I'm sorry. So yes, it's about data, how we process the data. So here's a simple actually illustration of how it works. There's a band here that you might be the manager. You registrate the work of this band after, of course, registration of the songwriters of the band. Then there's a sound recording that goes to a label, to digital distribution, to DSPs, to the users. And here is a DSP backend reporting to our system that's called U-Rights. I won't go further today to explain what U-Right is, but Catherine knows how it works. This is the way it works. So in the end, we do the matching between the work registration on the left and the reporting we have from the users on the right. And this creates, we do this matching in order to create the royalty distribution here at last. We handle the volume, of course. These are the challenges: handling the volumes, matching usages and works, providing transparency, and working in a growing competitive environment, and not only competitive, but very challenging at every moment. I was speaking about the buyouts. That's a real situation for us today. So this is your rights. I won't say tell more about it today. This is our technological tool to collect online and distribute the rights. This is when what you rights allows you as managers, but this is mainly for publishers. This allows you to have a very precise ID, periods per period, to know where your music has been streamed, and as manager, as you'd like to know, and to define an international strategy, an online strategy. These online figures and information may be a very, very precious tool to help you to guide your tours, for instance, and find booking agents in the right territories where you know that your music is streamed, and you can also have a better idea of who to partner with in terms of DSPs. Should I be with Apple Music or Spotify or Deezer? These are questions that our tools help for the manager usage. That's it for the presentation, and Chayé and myself are very open to all your questions regarding SACEM and, of course, the development of your artist career, especially in emerging markets.
Amazing, thank you. I think I would like to hear a little bit just from Chayé directly before we jump into some of the questions. So I'm curious about, I'd love to know just, some insights that you have around your specific region, Chayé. So what are some of the common challenges, maybe what some misconceptions around the region, or what is sort of SACEM's general strategy with the sub-Saharan African region specifically?
Thank you, Andrea. I won't talk too much about the challenges because they are quite the same as the one enumerated by Habib. So let's go directly to the misconception. I think that number one misconception is to see Africa as one monolithic block, because there are at least as many differences as there are countries, and there are more than 50 countries. When you add the languages diversity, several regional economic unions, we see that, yeah, you have to envision Africa as a patchwork, not a monolithic block. It's very important. And the other one, so you have, that means that your approach has to be bespoke. Then the other one misconception around Africa is to consider Africa as a lost cause when it comes to copyright enforcement, and therefore when it comes to structuring the music industry, because people are talking about piracy, etc., etc. But of course, yes, there's still a lot of challenges to tackle, and mainly when it comes to copyright royalties collections. Figures are not satisfactory, but I think that everybody should see these as a room for progression, because Africa is really a continent of opportunities, and demography is one of Africa's main assets. There are more than 1.2 billion people in Africa, and 60% are under 25 years old. So that means that you have these vibrant, dynamic youth, and you know that youth is hungry for cultural content, and there's also a burgeoning middle class, and that's why right now almost all international players in the music field are in Africa. The majors are back: Universal, Sony, Warner, the likes of Spotify, Apple Music, Deezer, YouTube, of course, TuneCore, Audiomack, and Facebook, Netflix, and still counting. So, there's almost every month you have a new announcement of a big company that is landing in Africa. So you have to bear that in mind, that it's a land of opportunity and that Africa is not waiting. Things are changing quickly thanks to the digital revolution. So I think it's the right time to get on board if it's not already the case.
Awesome. Thank you for that. I really appreciate that. I think also something that sometimes people maybe aren't aware of is also how strong telecommunications technology has been across the African continent for a really long time. Like Canada is behind in that regard. There's areas where people do not get cell service. Large swaths of Canada are underserved in that way, and that's something to consider. Where there's a lot of mobile users in Africa, and so there's a lot of availability for content consumption across the continent.
And I would like, sorry, to stress the fact also that there is a francophone and an anglophone market in Africa, because you have around 200 million English-speaking person in Africa, and more than 120 million French-speaking people. So it's very interesting for Canadian creation, because you can get exposure and business for French-speaking acts, but also English-speaking acts. Absolutely. And yes, definitely, digital is huge in Africa right now. And it's how can I say? It's mobile dominates the digital landscape. So by the end of 2019, there were approximately 460 million smartphones in Africa, and this figure should skyrocket to 845 million by end 2024. And you have a lot of low-cost smartphones, so people are really embracing digital. And it's no surprise that telcos dominates these ecosystem. They have developed online music platforms, but some manufacturers too. So, for instance, you have Boomplay, which is the service provided by Transnet, which is a Chinese company, and their phones are very popular in Africa. So that's why right now Boomplay is the number one streaming platform in Africa. So you have to think about these local platform as well, not just stick to Spotify, Deezer. They are doing their thing also in Africa, but you have these local platforms that are very important. And one thing also about Africa is the place of how can I say, the importance of ringback tones is still a thing in Africa. So you have to bear that in mind too, and when you are developing content, because this is a very interesting market and lucrative one. So, for instance, in Nigeria, even in let's say aside from South Africa, where streaming is already let's say full-fledged, in the rest of the continent, mobile digital revenues still heavily depend on ringback tones. And for instance, in Nigeria, let's say a huge part of digital revenues in the music come from ringback tones still. So you have to think about that. And a path of development in Africa could be building music collaborations with some artists who have continental reach and an international appeal as well. And there are more and more African acts who are gaining traction overseas. And even a guy, a superstar, a mega star like Drake did featuring with an African artist, and jumped also on a track produced by an African composer. And so he has, let's say, set the blueprint. And I think that it could be interesting that the artists who are represented by the managers right now how can I explore this path, because right now, let's see, people have a very good opinion when it comes to Canadian music, because you have all those big acts. You have Drake, you have Justin Bieber, you have JC Reyes, who are very popular in Africa. So people are very keen to collaborate with Canadian artists. So there could be a way to build momentum in Africa.
Amazing. That was so much valuable insight. Thank you so much for that. We do have quite a few questions for SACEM. Let's have a look. So, there's so many. Somebody did ask about boom play, and I know you did just address it, but I just kind of want to drill into this. So how does SACEM handle DSP licensing in Africa, for example, with boom play?
And yes, what is interesting in the digital world is that due to the fragmentation of repertoire, we can directly license those platforms. So we have a licensing deal with Boomplay regarding Africa. So it's fine. So you have us, we are trying to match what is going on in Africa as well. And we also have other reciprocal, licensing deals with international platforms that cover Africa. So for instance, the deal with Facebook, Instagram, with YouTube, with TikTok cover Africa. So that means that we are acting like a one-stop shop for our members on all those territories. So we can secure copyright royalties collections on the continent.
And you get to participate in those deals through your relationship with Socan.
Definitely.
That was going to be my follow-up, Catherine. Thank you. So I know everybody's like, but this is a good question from William, who asks, what makes, I don't know who to pose this to exactly, so the three of you can arm wrestle for this, but what do you think makes a reciprocal agreement effective as you describe your agreement with each other?
Okay, I'll start with that. I think the first thing that's required in making a reciprocal agreement effective is a detailed and frank negotiation up front. I think the agreement is only as strong as the initial conversations and negotiation at the beginning, so that expectations are very clear. The second component to an effective agreement is, if that piece goes well, hopefully it breeds a level of trust between the partners. So an effective agreement also would have a strong level of trust. We recently renegotiated, it's interesting, our reciprocal with SACEM in the light of our relationship with Harmonia and the digital distribution deal that we have with them. And so I would say what makes our deal effective is that it came from a frank negotiation, from a position of trust. And also I would add that one of the things that I've been working on this year is that a lot of the reciprocals globally are based on a CSAC template that was developed, well, I don't actually know when it was developed, but it was long before I was in this business, decades ago, which doesn't necessarily represent a modern music industry. So one of the things that Socan is in the process of doing right now is renegotiating our major reciprocals around the world that represent a new digital world, a new world where we're dealing with higher levels of competition, transparency. Some of the issues that Habib mentioned as challenges for SACEM are definitely things that Socan thinks about also, and we're trying to integrate those into our reciprocals so that we're setting standards around transparency, matching of data, to ensure that we're doing both of us can do the best job possible. The key word to reciprocal is that it goes, the same terms are for both partners, right? So what we agree to do for SACEM, SACEM is agreeing to do for us.
That's great, thank you. And a quick follow-up around you just mentioning data and transparency. There was a question from earlier after Habib's presentation about, and I'm sorry, I don't remember what the tool is called. I want to say UBC. I'm just making it up.
You're right.
Is that a tool that's available to Canadians, like to Socan people? Like, how does that, or do we have something comparable? Or
yeah, so Socan through our relationship with SACEM, Socan has access to rights for us to be able to do our part of the job. In terms of what we provide to our members, we have similar tools and systems that are designed specifically for the Canadian market.
Great, and I will find where those are, everybody, and we will include that in our extensive post-event resource email. Let's have a look. We have got some more questions here. I think there was a question for Chaye, just sort of a follow-up around genres. So, you know, I know you did touch on this, but if you can expand a little bit on which genres you think may present a lot of opportunities in that region for creators, like what's hot?
Yeah, that's what. Yeah, it's urban music and all the different types of urban musics that are hot right now on the continent. So you have rap, R&B. You have what we call Afropop, which is our version of rap and R&B blended. You have what is named bongo flavor in Eastern Africa, with an artist like Diamond Platnumz, who is very big. So yes, the Nigerian vibe, the Afrobeats. So it's different from the music that Fela developed, created, and helped develop. But it's right now. It's all the urban vibes are very hot on the continent. So yes, if you are you have artists working in this genre, there are a lot of collaboration that you could be doing, but world music is still a thing, and there are some strong acts on the continent. And I know that in Canada there's so much diversity, due to historical reality. So yes, even those kind of artists, folk and Native American genres who could find interesting avenues on the continent in terms of collaboration.
I think, Andrea, as I look through the questions, I can see some of the topics for your next seminars coming up here, because there's a question about NFTs, which is a whole other hours worth of conversation. There's a question about Habib's reference to buyouts, and boy, oh boy, do I ever want to talk to your members about buyouts. There's definitely a big conversation to be had there. So this is great. You've got your list of topics for your next batch of webinars that's going to come out of the chat from this one.
Okay. I would just like to answer a question. I saw that William Gary wanted to know for international writers who affiliate with SACEM, South African international writers especially, do we help them develop within France and as well as in other foreign markets? Yes, the answer is yes, because we want to bridge the gap between Africa and the international market. And there's a lot interest for African music right now in France, but in all international markets. So yes, we have some partnerships that we have developed, for instance, with a festival in Hamburg that we can use as a platform to showcase their talents and meet some professionals. So I'm talking about the Repertoire Festival in Hamburg, for instance, but there are some other opportunities as well. But definitely, yes.
Great. I want to bring this question to Chaye and Habib. I think this is a really interesting question that Heron just asked. Basically asking any advice, considerations for African Canadian diaspora who are looking to tap into specific African markets, who particularly wish to avoid some of the sort of colonial behaviors in like the Western culture, so what's your best advice in terms of people who are looking to collaborate within the region and explore?
I'll let Chaye say more about the collaborations in sub-Saharan Africa, but just about the spirit. It's very important to work with the whole system of music in the MENA region, in the Arab countries, or in sub-Saharan Africa. It's very important to go there to the festivals and work with the local technicians, local booking agents. Try to find a booking agent there and not just book from Paris, London, or wherever you are in Canada. It's very important that you trust the people. Catherine was talking about trust between sister societies. We can talk about trust between live promoters, for instance. There are groups of live promoters. Be interested in what's happening in Morocco, in Ivory Coast, and give it a chance, because it's the potential is really there. It will just take time, but in some places it's already there, it's ready. But Chayé knows more about the situation concretely in sub-Saharan Africa. Chayé?
There are a lot of agencies, companies that you can rely on to develop your business. And for instance, concretely, when it comes to RBT, so ringback tones, there are some agencies dedicated to this kind of content, and that can put you in touch with the telcos. And if you want to distribute your music on Boomplay, there are some aggregators that can provide. There are some African aggregators that can provide this kind of service. And yeah, in order to avoid this colonial approach, you need to work with people on the ground, because right now you have more and more skilled, trained person, and who are building the ecosystem. So just reach out, and yeah, you can make things happen. And if you aim to do a genuine collaboration, featurings, music featurings, yeah, people will embrace you, and will make things happen, definitely, and in a very respectful way. And I think that it will be the beginning of fruitful relationships with Africa, and lasting ones.
Yeah, we've both been, Chayé doesn't say it because he's humble, but he's been a very successful rapper in Benin, his country of origin. I've been a booking agent also in Tunisia, promoting festivals in Lebanon. And I know that there can be a spirit, mostly through the embassies or cultural centers of Canada or European countries, but there are more and more direct relationships, and this is a very constructive and positive relationship. We are not we don't see that under this angle of the post-colonial thing, when it's a frank relationship between professionals who can be based, some in Egypt, some in Canada, or some in Ghana, and others in Germany. That's a simple win-win situation. We want to collaborate. And so that's a very important point today. And we are lucky, I think, at SACEM with our office in Lebanon and our story that is not always easy to tell. But we are happy to be in such a city like Paris, where we are based with so many musicians from Africa, from the MENA region, from all over the world, who can trust us to develop their career everywhere without this fear of anything that would be inappropriate in our way of working.
Yeah, definitely. We've been there, we've done that, yes, and that's why we know what's at stake on these regions, in these regions as well. And yeah, if we and we are trying to be helpful to the international community. So if we can share some insights with you, let's say deeper, it will be with pleasure, no problem.
Excellent. I may hold you all to that.
Definitely, yeah.
May I just say two words about this question about the buyouts? Because it is an issue, but it's more than an issue. It might be a revolution, but not in the right turn, not in the right way. I mean, these buyouts led by Netflix for DSPs, for instance, or in the Arab countries, they are very, very popular, and they've been popular, and we've been fighting against buyouts in the Middle East for years and years. It kills the principle, the basic principle of our job to protect creators, that is proportionality. Proportionality is the only way to build a heritage for a creator, to have a catalog getting bigger, and something that can belong to him for his life and even for his years. And this is so important that sometimes I'm surprised that it is still something that we have to fight for, because this is very easy. I can easily understand it where there's loads of money proposed to an artist for just a film, for a TV show, for just a film music, But usually this is not the case. The monies are not that big compared to an advance with a normal deal, cinch deal. This is what has to be done, and we really need the creators, songwriters, composers, lyricists, all of them to be with us for this fight, because if not, GAFAs are very strong and we might not be strong enough to keep that position and protect the creators.
And just to build on Habib's point there, what might look like a lot of money right now will be an amount that will go down. It will only go down once the system is broken, once there is no alternative, once the Netflix of the world have crippled collective rights management. The big amount of money you took now will be much, much smaller the next time they come calling and wanting you to write music for a buyout. How's that for a threat on which to wrap up this session?
I like it. I'm here for it, Catherine. Thank you.
Should I be waving my fist in the
yes.
air? You know, it's like, let's head to the ramparts.
Yes, I am here for it. Well, I think you know, we're getting on 2:15 here. So and I know that Chai is in France, and it's 8:15 where he is, and yeah. So I think we've taken enough of your time today, but I really appreciate all of the information. It was a lot to take in, and everybody, we will be sharing this recording with you. So if, like myself, you kind of feel like you need to see parts of it again, that will be available, and we'll be providing some follow-up information as well. Catherine, thank you so much. Thank you to Socan for, you know, effectively supporting all of us here today and for taking part in this event. Thank you so much, Chai and Habib and SACEM, for sharing all of your information and for everything that you do together, the three of you together and individually, and for your respective organizations. Thank you for protecting our creative people and creative works so effectively, and for paving pathways for people to build their careers. It's very much appreciated.
It was really nice to be invited, and it was great to meet you, Chai. Nice to see you, Habib. It's nice to have an opportunity to visit with my SACEM partners.
This is
absolutely
great. Thank
you.
Good.
Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you for being here today.
Okay, take care.
Yes.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for having us, and cheers.